Hey everyone, this is Dr. Casey Johnson. Thank you so much for taking time to listen to the Unlock Wellness podcast. I know you're going to love today's episode with Jeff Tritten. Jeff's story is so inspiring, so I'm excited to have him on to share a story with you guys. If you've been loving the Unlock Wellness podcast, be sure to jump onto iTunes, subscribe, and write a review. It really helps me out a lot, and I really appreciate all of the feedback and support. Also, be sure to follow me on social media to keep up with the latest podcast episodes. The best way to connect with me is on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. My username across the board is at Dr. Casey Johnson. That's DrKaseyJohNson. You can also check out my website at drcaseyjohnson.com. It has all of the past podcast episodes and more information about each guest under the Listen tab. While you're on my site, also be sure to check out the Shop tab where you can check out my first book of my Healthy Children's Book series. Thank you again for listening. I hope this episode leaves you feeling inspired to start making positive changes to your health. Now it's time for today's episode. I hope you love my conversation with Jeff Tritten. Welcome to the Unlock Wellness podcast. I'm Dr. Casey and excited for today's guest. I'm here with Jeff Tritten, and Jeff has such an inspiring story. While co-owning a barbecue restaurant, his health began to rapidly decline. He gained over 130 pounds and was suffering from an array of health issues such as prediabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. And on his journey to reclaim his health and life, he discovered a plant-based diet and hasn't looked back. And Jeff has lost over 168 pounds and is now supporting people who are also wanting to reclaim their health with a plant-based diet. So I'm just extremely excited to have Jeff on to share his story and everything that he's working on. So Jeff, thank you so much for taking time to come on. I'm excited to have you.
Hi, thanks Casey. Thanks for having me.
I just want to start with your backstory. First off, where you're from and, what your health and wellness looked like at a younger age, so we understand just how it's progressed over time.
Yeah, absolutely. Growing up, I was always actually a skinny kid. I grew up in Minnesota, and we're kind of a hardy bunch there with the very cold winters. A lot of ice skating and things like that in the winter, so we tend to keep active. A lot of biking in the summer as a kid. That was before all the electronic devices, of course. In my 20s, I got married fairly young, and my wife was a baker. She absolutely loved to bake. So, sugars and refined flour and stuff like that. I was in the restaurant industry for a number of those years, and my weight just fluctuated up and down. I would say that generally speaking, in my 20s and 30s, at least to mid 30s anyway, I was 20 to 40 pounds overweight, but oftentimes I could lose much of that doing like a low carb diet. But really, it's what I know about it now. It was just a matter of calorie restriction. So in 2011, my partner and I took over a small diner in the town that I live in, just south of Ann Arbor. And it was breakfast, lunch, your typical deli sandwiches, hamburgers, breakfast with eggs and bacon and sausage and hash browns, that type of thing. And we ended up opening in the evenings to do barbecue, and it ended up getting so popular that we did barbecue all of the time and stopped doing the weekday breakfasts, but had a real big breakfast crowd on the weekends. And over the course of that time, from 2011 through 2016, I gained, 20 to 25 pounds a year. A lot of that had to do with the fried food and the fried hash browns and lots of eggs and lots of bacon and sausage. And then, of course, the barbecue. We had a massive smoker and would smoke, and we would fill the thing with pork and brisket and salmon and you name it. And in 2015, I started to get real severe edema. So I went to a couple of urgent cares and my primary care doctor, And their answer to me was to basically, give me an anti-inflammatory, give me a painkiller, and give me a muscle relaxer. At one point, one of the urgent cares said, well, I want to do an EKG, and she saw something that she didn't like, and then sent me to the University of Michigan hospital. So I went to U of M, and they kind of did the EKG. They did lots of blood work, things like that, and they didn't find anything that they felt was alarming. One doctor had mentioned that you might want to consider gastric bypass surgery because I was pretty overweight, right? And that edema persisted 2015, 2016, and it got to the point where I couldn't even put shoes on. I don't know if you know what Crocs are.
Yeah, I do know what Crocs are.
they make them specifically for culinary. It's a bistro style, and it's a non-slip. And I literally had to cut the top of them to get my foot in it. That's how swollen I was. So I had this severe edema, and then I started having real gastrointestinal problems, just extreme pain. So the beginning of October 2016, I checked into another hospital, and they ran a bunch of tests. They didn't really see anything. They didn't address the edema. They didn't know why I was having stomach pain. They did a full GI. They pumped me so full of drugs, painkillers and relaxers, and oh my gosh. And that was sort of my moment of truth, call it. My family had gone home for the evening. It was about 3:00 in the morning, and I just couldn't sleep. I had bad sleep apnea as well. Being so overweight. And at that point, I was about 348 pounds. And as I lied in the hospital, I thought, you know what? I'm going to frickin' die here. And that's the way I felt. I said, I am going to die. My family's not here. And there was just this sort of panic in me. And the nurse came in and decided to give me even more drugs to relax me. So it was pretty horrible. The next day, they decided to just let me go, and they had 8 more prescriptions that they wanted me to take. And I'm like, you haven't addressed this, you haven't figured out the stomach pains, the edema. I want to see the doctor, and because I had not seen the doctor that entire time. And so the doctor came in, and I said, you're releasing me. I feel horrible. I don't, I'm very sick here, and I don't know what to do. I don't just want to end up back in here, And he said to me, well, you just need to stop living like a 30-year-old man and live like a 45-year-old man. And, okay. And it kind of pissed me off. I didn't know what that meant. Right.
Right.
So upon release from the hospital, I called my mom and I said, I'm scared. They're not giving me any answers. They want me to take 8 more prescriptions. And here were her words to me. Thank you, Mom. She said, don't fill those prescriptions. She says, food is medicine. Do the damn research. And that was her answer to me. And, at that point I couldn't work. So I did. I started doing the research, and, I was looking for basically an anti-inflammatory diet. So what I decided to do was start taking turmeric. I dropped chicken, beef, pork, and cut my dairy consumption down to next to nothing. And within 3.5 weeks, the edema that I'd had for almost 2 years went away. And all just because of diet. And I started eating lots of fresh fruits and vegetables. And in 100 days, I lost 80 pounds, and my sleep apnea went away. My blood pressure went down. My cholesterol started to normalize. My blood sugars started to normalize. And I was just like, wow, there's something to this. So now we're into 2017, February. I watched Forks Over Knives, and I ditched the dairy. And within a couple of weeks of that, doing more research on where do I get my protein, right? I realized that all plants have protein, and eat a cup of beans every day, right? So I quit eating the dairy, and then a couple of weeks later, I dropped the fish and eggs as well, which I was still consuming a little bit. And my health just continued to improve and continued to improve. So now a year ago, it's been almost exactly to the date, I went in and had my blood work done and everything was like perfect.
Crazy.
So yeah, so pretty crazy. And then, it just continued. So at that point I was down over 130 pounds, and now it's 168 pounds, and I'm almost to my college weight. I have maybe 15 pounds to go, but I'm not like working hard at it. I know that the other thing that's happened is I've built a lot of muscle in the meantime. But in 20 months, I did 168 pounds, which is just phenomenal.
That is. It's just so amazing. It's amazing that your mom gave you that advice, because think about how many people have gone through that situation or something similar to what you went through, but they never did the research. They didn't find the documentaries, and now they're living that way with that many medications and literally
Right.
no hope, which is why I love what you do, just getting the message out there. And it just blows my mind just how overlooked a lot of that stuff can be, and not addressing food as medicine. And was your mom always into that kind of thing, or did she have her own health journey, or where did that even come from?
Yeah, she decided to do basically like a pescatarian diet, which has been, I want to say 12 to 15 years ago. And she is now 70 years old. She does yoga every day. She
Awesome.
walks. She still works. She is incredibly healthy. She had a bout with cancer, but she beat it. And she's just she's absolutely amazing. So she has now ditched the dairy as well, which is fantastic. And her and I actually had watched Forks Over Knives together. So she's quite healthy and vibrant in her getting old age. As a matter of fact, when we go places, sometimes people will ask, "So how long have you guys been together?" and I don't look old for my age, right? But
That's
she looks
funny.
incredibly young. Yeah, it is funny.
That's amazing. So how did that affect your work? I know whenever you said that you decided to take that plunge, you weren't able to work. So you went straight from you co-owned the barbecue restaurant. You had to kind of step aside because of the health issues, and then
Right. So I wasn't in the business, but I was still involved. I was, trying to help make some menu changes and do some more healthy items and some vegan items, because one of the things that I discovered was that, what they figured out was the big trend for 2017 was plant-based menu items. So I was trying to work with my partner on that, and I was still doing the books and the taxes and things like that. But I just saw the relationship deteriorating. And, finally, first of the year, 2017, I basically signed everything over to my partner. They agreed to take on the debt and walked away. Now I walked away basically with, 6 years of hard work and nothing, but I also walked away scot-free with no debt. So blessing in disguise. And, since then I've built a blog. I do nutrition counseling via Skype or Zoom, and I work with the Plant-Based Nutrition Support Group, which is a Michigan-based nonprofit. That's been about a year now, and we can talk more about that as well. So it was a big move, and I had to really walk away from everything that I knew in the restaurant industry, and it was hard. It was hard.
Yeah, because you had to kind of form a new identity. You had done that for so long, and
Right.
Did they kind of random? Did they keep the vegan options once you left?
Oh, they never implemented them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but subsequently the restaurant burned down 5 months after I signed it over.
Wow, man, that's awful.
Yeah.
That's awful. Yeah. So once you did that, you're starting to do your own thing. So what made you want to start the blog? Were you just so inspired that you wanted to get the word out there? Like, how did all of that progress?
Yeah, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, and I'm one of those people that can't sit still, so I got to do something. So I started the Respectful Living blog, just as, first of all, it was an outlet for me, but as I continued to just get healthier and healthier, I got excited and said, you know what, I just really want to share this with everybody. So I built up my social media presence, and I put out a lot of articles on plant-based nutrition and why dairy and meat is bad for you, and things like that, environmental impacts, etc. So it's gotten to be a real passion for me, and I absolutely love it. And it can be a little overwhelming at times. For example, when my story was on Forks Over Knives,
Right.
my social media went crazy, and I didn't know that they had published it when they did. And I'm like, what in the world? Why am I getting
Why am I
this
so
friend
popular?
requests? And,
Right.
and then someone's like, hey, I just saw your story on Forks Over Knives. I'm like, oh, okay.
Makes sense.
So yeah, it's been an interesting journey as far as that's concerned. As far as the blog is concerned, I try and my real goal is to just help people understand that going plant-based really is not difficult, and if a fat barbecue guy can do it, anybody can do it. And it's just a matter of finding your 25 or 30 go-to recipes and things that you love, and sometimes doing the replacement faux meats and cheeses are okay, but in the long run, whole food plant-based is definitely the ticket.
Right. And what was your probably the biggest struggle for you when you were making that transition, or did it go pretty easily once you figured out the substitutions?
Well, here's the thing that I found, and I find this with my coaching clients as well, that when they go all in and they see tremendous success, and you just feel so much better, it's pretty hard to go back.
Right.
It's sort of like, why would I? And as you go deeper into, if you just do it for health and do plant-based, you start realizing that there is so much cruelty out there in factory farms, and the environmental impact of animal agriculture is horrendous.
Right.
So there's other things that come about. So I do consider myself an ethical vegan as well. So I just absolutely wouldn't go back. So I think there's a lot of factors that come to play, but just the tremendous health benefit and just the way you feel is mind-boggling.
Right. Yeah, that is very true, though. Once you start diving into the environmental aspect of it, the animal agricultural aspect of it too, it's just like it's so much deeper than just losing weight. It's just so much more than that. And yeah, like you said, like I could never go back just based on the other stuff alone. So it's super powerful.
It is. Yeah. And I have to say that it didn't just going plant-based didn't just change me on the outside. It certainly changed me on the inside as well. I find that I've always been a compassionate person, but I find just that level of, compassion and concern for others and the environment has grown tremendously. So,
what do you think was the first thing you noticed when you started eating that way? Like, was the weight the first thing you noticed, or was it energy, or can you remember?
So yeah, the first thing that happened is that I was able to sleep at night. I had such bad sleep apnea. Of course, a lot of that had to do with the immediate weight loss. And granted, that first 80 pounds, likely 20 or 25 pounds of that was water weight from the edema, but still, 60 pounds in fat weight in 100 days is like a lot of, that's 20 pounds a month, right?
Right.
So I wouldn't say at that point that it was the energy. It was just that wow, I'm able to sleep. So I just felt better overall, and of course then I don't have all those blood sugar spikes and the ups and downs. And then when you get rid of the dairy, interesting thing, by the way, when I stopped consuming dairy, I had always struggled with anxiety my whole life, just kind of this like gripping thing inside me that, if you've ever had anxiety, you know what I'm talking about, but just this, I don't know. I mean, it was a daily struggle for me. And another 3 weeks after ditching dairy, that went away magically. And all of a sudden I was like, wow, I feel really good. I just feel like very satisfied inside. Come to find out that dairy has, what they call a casomorphin that hits the same receptor in the brain as heroin. And so you get ups and downs. And there's probably a good reason why we have so many so many people that are diagnosed with depression and bipolar disorder and you name it. And I'm convinced that it has a lot to do with dairy consumption.
100%. And it's one of those things too, Jeff. It's like you don't realize how bad you feel until you start to feel actually good.
Right.
And I think that's the problem with a lot of people. It's like they'll be like, oh, I'm good eating this because I'm fine. I'm good. Right. But it's like you don't realize how good you could feel and how, I mean, not just physically, but like mentally as well.
Right. Yeah. So, I think when I hit I want to say the 130-pound mark, so I was still over 200 pounds, that's when I really noticed my energy levels go up, just not carrying all that weight around all the time. I was still 220 at the time, and I'm all of 5'9". So, it was still pretty heavy. And, now 40 pounds later, I have more energy than I know what to do with.
That's amazing. And I'm sure the plant-based nutrition support group helps with your accountability as well, even though you do have the strong conviction with it because of the other reasons. But I mean, when you're helping other people stay accountable, it's just, it takes your own accountability to a whole nother level.
Yeah, it does. It does. One of the apps that I absolutely love is Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen.
Yeah.
And that has helped me just be super mindful of my nutrition. And so I make sure that I get my greens and my beans and my nuts and my seeds and my berries and turmeric. And, I take my flaxseed every day. And, I just, all of those things. And here's the thing about it is you can eat so much food and not feel that sluggishness afterwards because it's just no saturated fat and full of antioxidants. And you get the antioxidants pumping through your veins, the nitric oxide from it. Oh my gosh.
Yep.
You just feel so amazing,
That app is amazing. You're right. Like you can eat way more than you think. And more than likely you're not eating enough of those foods. So I remember whenever I use the app on a regular basis, I need to be better with it. I'm almost like, how am I going to eat all this? Because I'm so full, but it's like you said, you don't feel sluggish at all.
Right. Yeah. So, and I know a whole group of guys that I don't know if you've ever heard of Josh LaJaunie's Missing Chins Run Club.
Yep.
So the missing, it's a bunch of overweight guys that they invite into the private group. And, I'm watching these guys just lose weight. They're running, they're on the treadmills, they're a little bit more each day. Tim Kaufman is another fantastic success story. Are you familiar with Tim as well?
Yeah, no, actually Josh and Tim, they've both been on the podcast and they're both amazing people.
They are. Yeah. I've had the opportunity to meet and spend time with both of them as well. Great. So, it's cool. It's neat to watch them as well inspire so many people to just work toward greater health. The Fat Man Rants podcast is awesome.
It is awesome.
Josh, if you just look at, a lot of those guys went on the Today Show here a couple years back and just so inspiring to so many people. And so that's been my thing as well. When a couple of different groups have gotten a hold of my story, like Veganuary and things like that, I get a lot of questions and I just really like to help people. And so that's really what my blog has turned into, just pushing people toward good health and just helping as many as I can. So
that's amazing. And Jeff, is the support group, is it like kind of intertwined with the blog, or is it two separate?
No, yeah, that would be separate. So my blog is arespectfullife.com. And the organization is the Plant-Based Nutrition Support Group. It's pbnsg.org. It's a Michigan-based 501c3 nonprofit that was started by Paul Chatlin. Paul has a pretty amazing story too. You should get him on the podcast.
Definitely. I would actually, send me that. You should send me that contact when we're done. I would love that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So Paul was fairly athletic, a little bit overweight, and all of a sudden ended up with an artery to his heart blocked at 100% and two at 65%, and gripping angina, just on immediate, quick onset. And he couldn't even take 5 steps without having to grip his chest and be out of breath and that type of thing. So he was fortunate enough to have a cardiologist that knew Dr. Carl Esselstyn. And so he got Paul in touch with Dr. Esselstyn, and he said, looking at your scans and talking to your cardiologist and that type of thing, I think that you could avoid having your chest cracked open. And he said, I'll do anything. So Esselstyn said, all right, whole food, plant-based, no oil, no nuts. Here's what you got to do. And so Paul said, yeah, I'll do it. And what he realized is that he got really lucky, and his whole goal was to pay it forward. So the plant-based nutrition support group now has almost 6,000 members, mostly in Michigan. We have 37 small groups, so where people in various communities all over the state meet, and we have a plant-based potluck. So it's really fun. There's a couple reasons it's fun. One, you get to try a lot of dishes that you probably wouldn't have, and people bring their recipes and their ideas and their cookbooks and all that type of thing. So you just get to try so many things, and then you're like, man, I really like this. I could eat this every week, or that type of thing. And then the other thing that's really cool is just you get such a sense of community.
Right.
And I would say that is probably the biggest gain that I've seen from PBNSG personally, is that there's just such a great group of people. And then they have large group meetings, and they'll bring in, they've had Dr. Michael Greger, Dr. Joel Furman, Dr. Joel Kahn is one of our medical directors, and just a number of people, Pam Popper and Juliana Haver, and these plant-based experts will come into our large group meetings. And Dr. T. Colin Campbell, we've had him in twice this year.
That's awesome.
And yeah, very cool. So we get like 700 people or more sometimes at these meetings.
Crazy. Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right with the community aspect of it, because if somebody wants to make this decision, they might not have the support at home or the friends that are going to be as supportive as you think they will be, but they're not. So it's whenever you can have like somebody you can text or call or message and have that support, that's really could be the difference between them going all in or falling off.
Yeah, that's true. And for me too, it was my network was my customers at the restaurant and the other local business owners and restaurant owners. There's 6 downtown restaurants. So I knew them quite well, and that was it. So one of the weird things for me when I walked away from the business was that I felt so disconnected from the community, and I just didn't feel that sense of community. And so I read the Blue Zones book, if you're familiar with that.
Yes.
And that's one of the things that they stressed, is that take stock of who your friends are and commit to those relationships and put time in. Family first, of course, and having a sense of community. So I decided to find a way to get back involved with my community. So I started doing plant-based cooking demonstration at our local farmers market. And then I started a small group for PBNSG locally as well. So yeah, it's been really interesting. And a lot of my customers don't even recognize me. People that would come in every week because I look completely different and 10 years younger, right?
Oh, that's amazing. So it was super well received then, the cooking demos?
It was, surprisingly well received. People were interested in, oh wow, you can cook without oil and you can make a healthy, hearty meal without having meat as the center. So yeah, it was good. It was good to be back involved with the community, and I've also done a number of talks and health seminars and things like that at our local senior center too. So just to stay involved and that type of thing, I think
that's amazing.
Good. Yeah,
that's amazing. What is your favorite thing to cook, Jeff?
My favorite thing, oh my gosh, I
Puts you on the spot.
So many. So I love chili, and one of the weird things that I do with my chili, I add smoked paprika, because once upon a time it was smoked brisket, right? Mm-hmm. But I add pureed cherries and dates.
Interesting.
And people are like, you put fruit in your chili? I'm like, tomatoes are fruit, right?
Right.
uh, and I put about a half a cup of very strongly brewed coffee. And if it's evening, of course, it's going to be decaf. So coffee, cherries, and dates is the sweetener, and it makes for a real robust, tasty chili. So that's one. I absolutely love Indian food, so I make a lot of curries. One of my recent favorites is a pumpkin lentil curry with coconut. It's like a coconut curry with spinach and all sorts of good stuff in it. My favorite grain is probably farro. So there's like a Mediterranean style dish that I'll make that's got chickpeas and farro and tomato and basil and kind of your Mediterranean herbs. So I have a lot of them. I mean, there's not too many foods I don't like, except lima beans and ketchup. So.
Oh man, you don't like ketchup. I bet you have some really good jackfruit recipes though, because of the barbecue.
Yeah, actually, so I do a little bit of private chefing here and there because I'll get some requests, and so I did a vegan wedding here several months back, and one of the things that they wanted to do for their late night party guests was jackfruit sliders. So yeah, I used my barbecue sauce recipe and like a Kansas City style, and did pulled jackfruit sliders, and man, people just went crazy over it.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Now I'm starving, and I'm gonna have to eat as soon as I jump off this podcast.
Yeah, I know, right?
That's amazing, Jeff. I mean, everything that you're doing is super inspiring, and your transformation is incredible. I mean, I know you're going to be able to help so many people just by continuing to share it. And, is there anything that you are working on in the future? I mean, I know you mentioned your blog and the support group. Is there anything else that you're working on that you want to throw out there and share, or just continue to help as many people as you can, put recipes out, blog?
There are two really large projects that I'm part of. Neither of which I can fully disclose.
Gotcha.
I will say that one of the things that we would like to do, the PBNSG as an organization, is bring a little bit more cohesive message to both the plant-based and the vegan community. You have your plant-based people that are for health and that stick on that, but you have your animal rights groups that are like not necessarily whole food plant-based eaters that are like, as long as it's vegan, it's good, right?
Right.
So, not just a health message, but a message that has to do with the environment and what we teach in our medical schools and things like that. But we really want to bring all of the groups together and have one central database and central place for being able to disseminate information to these various groups and influencers and activists and you name it. So that's one thing that we're working on. We're also working on a very major initiative with a huge corporation that's working on putting plant-based wellness program into their offices worldwide.
That's amazing.
So, it's a game changer if that happens, which looks like it's going to. And we have several other organizations that we're working with to really try to bring that to their employees. They understand that it does have an impact on their water and emissions footprints and things like that. So there's there's some companies that have taken notice as far as their sustainability goals are concerned. So we're working with them to implement plant-based nutrition programs in their workplaces and to make their employee cafeterias what we would call plant forward. Google's done it, for example. Unilever's done it, where they basically take and put 30% of their menu items are plant-based.
That's awesome.
And they'll put, like, Google is pretty cool. They do 177,000 employee meals every day worldwide. And they have these massive plant-based buffets front and center in all of their employee cafeterias.
Wow.
And they feed their employees for free as well.
Right.
So,
That's crazy.
It is crazy. So 80% of their employees are now saying that they're eating much healthier, and Google knows that it makes an impact worldwide in doing that. So yeah, pretty cool. So we're trying to work with some companies on those initiatives as well.
That's cool. Yeah, there definitely is a cultural shift right now that's more companies are going to be doing that kind of work and being more aware of what they're doing and their carbon footprints. I just like in a few years, it's going to look so different. I mean, I think it's progressing very well, or it's going to progress within the next, 5 to 10 years. I mean, it has to.
Yeah. Well, even since for me in the last 2 years, it just blows my mind how many vegan and plant-based restaurants have popped up.
Yeah.
And how many, I mean, look at Beyond Meat's about to launch their IPO, and the Impossible Burger was unheard of 2 years ago. And now it's like in most but shoes in my little town, I can get it at the local pub,
Yeah. Same thing with Beyond Burger in Florida. Like it's everywhere. And I was in Charleston, South Carolina, or not. Yeah, no, was it Charleston? I was in Charleston, but I think it was. Oh no, we were in Outer Banks as well. In Outer Banks, every seafood restaurant that we went to, because I went with my in-laws, and like every seafood restaurant had not Impossible Burger, but Beyond Burger as an option.
Oh, no kidding!
It's like they partnered basically with all of these restaurants, but it was really great for me because I didn't have to worry about what I was going to eat at these places. But yeah, I mean, same thing that you were saying, like that wasn't the case a few years ago.
Yeah. So we've seen a lot of those alternatives grow. We've seen, even like the Follow Your Heart cheese, and Daiya has been on the market for a long time. They finally changed their recipe; it's a little better. But you look at like Miyoko's Creamery and Elmhurst Dairy going completely vegan. I mean, on down the line, do you subscribe to plant-based news?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's just so many amazing things that are happening worldwide. I have friends in Australia, and they're seeing a massive movement there. And of course, the Dominion movie came out in Australia, New Zealand. It just blows my mind. It just continues to grow,
Yeah. No, it's definitely exciting, and it's just going to get better. And I mean, especially with the kind of support that you're giving people, it's only going to help it get there faster. So I definitely appreciate all of the work that you're doing. And Jeff, what is the best way for people to follow you on social media? That way they can keep up with everything that you're doing, that just as you put out work. What's the best way for people to keep up with you?
I would say if you go to my blog at arespectfullife.com, I do have a newsletter that I occasionally put out, but all of my social media contacts are there for Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and all that kind of stuff. And, I use the different platforms differently as well. Instagram, I really try hard to post, the meals that I eat every day and just show people how easy it is and how diverse it can be. So that's my Instagram. On Facebook, I kind of focus on people's personal testimonies, and then on Twitter, it's like all nutrition science, just
Got
about. It. So it just kind of depends. It's just there are things that I'm interested in, and it seems like different platforms work better for different things. But yeah, I love Twitter because there's so many good plant-based doctors and nutritionists on it, and we work very hard at dispelling the myths of the keto diet and low carb, high fat diet, things like that. So that's kind of exciting for me because I'm a bit of a nutrition nerd. And just a side note on doctors and the horrible advice that I received from the medical community. People don't realize that doctors, and especially if they've been in the profession for a while, they probably received under 23 hours of nutrition education in their entire medical school.
And that number's pushing it too.
It is, yeah. It's like 19.6 in one study, and there's a handful of schools that have pushed that number up a bit to more like the 23-hour mark. But yeah, it's kind of ridiculous. So I pay very close attention to plant-based nutritionists like Jenny Messina and Juliana Haver and Jeff Novick and Ray Cronies, some of these people that really know their stuff.
Yeah, it's very true.
Yeah. So, I mean, those are just great resources for people to be able to understand that, all plants have protein, and, do you need to take a bunch of supplements? No, you take a B12 a couple times a week, and, protein. I just saw a great video done by a PCRM doctor. Switch for Good is the organization, and it was a bunch of Olympians and vegan athletes that are trying to get people to get off of dairy. And they had Namai Delgado, the massive bodybuilder, who's
right.
fantastic, never eaten meat in his entire life, and the dude's huge. And I forget the name of the Olympian that they had on there as well, but they had a great thing about protein conversion, and that if you eat enough calories, you're going to get plenty of protein from plants. And of course, where does your protein get its protein? Your vegetarian cows and silverback gorillas and rhinos and all these strong mammals on Earth eat plants.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's very true. And no, I mean, that's amazing. I'm glad that you just gave all of those resources. And as far as your social media, I'll put all of those in the show notes. That way people can go give you a follow. And then I'm excited to keep up with your Twitter now, because I love reading all the research too. So I know you'll, so I'm excited to give that a follow.
Yeah, I put out some pretty interesting threads as far as like cognitive decline by a high-fat diet, and I'll have all of the links to the medical research and the papers and the studies that have been done on it. And I wrote a piece on why I hate the ketogenic diet, and I have reference to over 1,200 studies, and it's a pretty intense read. But it really covers all the basis, and has current research and things like that. So, I try really hard to just put out solid information for people, and hopefully it's in a way that they understand. And I always tell people at the end of my articles, if you have any questions about the content, please feel free to reach out to me directly via email. So.
That's awesome. No, I mean, I just appreciate what you're doing for this movement so much. I mean, like I said before, you're going to change so many lives, and I'm excited to keep up with everything that you do as well. So,
awesome.
Yeah. And Jeff, just closing question that I ask every guest. But if you just had one piece of advice for the audience, maybe it's been your biggest takeaway through your wellness journey so far, but if you just had one piece of advice to give, what would it be?
Well, number one, don't worry about protein. All plants have protein. That's the least of our concerns. There are no protein deficiency wards in hospitals waiting for vegans. I'm sorry, but there's not. I've never seen a protein deficient vegan.
Absolutely. No, it's 100% true. And Jeff, thank you so much for taking time to come on. I loved having you, and excited to keep up with all of your amazing work.
Thanks, Casey.
Thank you.
All right. Well, keep in touch.
Thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you loved my conversation with Jeff. He's doing so much positive work, so be sure to give him a follow on social media to keep up with everything that he's been working on. You can find his social media links that we talked about in the episode in the show notes, but you can also find them on my website as well at drcaseyjohnson.com. That's DrKaseyJohnson.com. Click on the Listen tab. Then from there, you'll be able to see all of the past guests that have come on the Unlock Wellness podcast, read a little bit about each guest, and be able to click on their social media links, websites, all of that. So all of Jeff's information can be found on my site as well. If you guys loved today's episode with Jeff, be sure to jump onto iTunes, subscribe, and write a review. It really helps me out a lot, and I really appreciate all of the feedback and support. Thank you guys so much again for tuning into today's episode. I hope you loved it. I hope it inspires you. And most importantly, I hope you take action.